Hello, students. This is Brijesh Kumar. Welcome in the second part of the essay Forgetting by Robert Lind. My dear students, in the first part, I have told you how he starts the chapter by mentioning a list of articles which was lost by railway travelers and at that time pasted on a wall at a great London station for auction. This particular list, which was pasted, forced him to think about the efficiency as well as the inefficiency of the human memory. And he says that it is the efficiency rather than the inefficiency of the human memory that compels my wonder. Why? Because modern man usually remembers everything since morning till late night when he goes to bed. But still, he is so forgetful that he forgets lots of things during journeys. Thereafter, he moves on to the next passages, telling us how people forget to take medicines, how people forget to post their letters, as well as how people forget walking sticks, umbrellas, books, etc. during their journeys. He then tells us about some certain kind of people like the sportsmen, anglers, poets, writers, etc., who usually are more forgetful than their ordinary fellows. And he says that for them, forgetting is a kind of virtue, and we have to start from here. When he says, absent mindedness of this kind seems to me all but a virtue. The absent minded man is often a man who is making the best of life and therefore has no time to remember the mediocre. Who would have trusted Socrates or Collis to post a letter? They had souls above things. The question whether the possession of a good memory is altogether desirable has often been discussed, and men with valuable memories have sometimes tried to make out a case for their superiority. He says that this kind of forgetfulness is a kind of virtue because the people who forget, such a people who forgets the thing, makes the most of his life because he engages his memories in better things, not in prosaic, tasteless things, not in mediocre things. And that's why he asks a question. Who would have trusted Socrates or Collis to post a letter? Perhaps none. Because Socrates, the greatest Greek philosopher, one of the greatest Greek philosophers, and Collis, one of the greatest British poet, these people, they had engaged their memories in better things than posting a letter. They had souls above such things. That means they had better things to do than to post a letter. Similarly, these young ones, the other people, kind of sportsmen or the anglers, they usually have better things to do, and that's why they may forget the things to do at the right moment. They had souls above such things. The question whether the possession of a good memory is altogether desirable has often been discussed, and men with fallible memories have sometimes tried to make out a case of their superiority. This has been a much debated point that the men or the human beings should have good memories or not. And those people who have bad memories or fallible memories, they always justify their bad memories on this ground only that they have better things to do. A man, they say, who is perfect remembering machine is seldom a man of the first intelligence. and they quote various cases of children or men who had marvelous memories and who it had no intellect to speak of. A man, they say, these people who are with fallible memories, who have bad memories, they always say, they justify their bad memories as something superior on this ground that a person who remembers everything perfectly can never be or hardly be a person of the first intelligence. And they give many examples in the support of this particular idea. They say that there are a number of children, there are a number of men who usually have wonderful memories, but they are not the intelligent people of the first rank. They are people who only mug up the things, omit out the things, and that's all. They can not be included in the first or the second rank of the intelligent people, and that's why these people with the fallible memories or the bad memories, they say that having perfect memory is not a symptom or a symbol of being a wise man. I imagine, however, that on the whole, the great writers and the great composers of music have been men with exceptional powers of memory. The poets I have known have had better memories than the stockbrokers I have known. Memory indeed is half the substance of their art. Further, he tells us the names of those people who usually have good memories. He says that on the whole, the great writers and the great composers of music, they usually have been the men of exceptional memories, because most of the things are related to their memories. Whenever they go to write the books or any kind of fictional work or the work based on facts, or any composer when he goes to compose the music, these people have to remember lots of things at the time of creation, at the time of creating their art. The poets, they also have better memories because they also have to think a lot. They have to recollect lots of things to compose the poems, and that's why these people, they have better memories. And he says that the poets have better memories than the stockbrokers means people who engage themselves in stock market. He says that these people are of exceptional powers of memory because most of their work are related to their strong memories. If they fail in their memories, they can hardly be good composer of music, they can hardly be good writers or good poets. On the other hand, statesmen seem to have extraordinarily bad memories. Let two statesmen attempt to recall the same event, what happened, for example, at some cabinet meeting, and each of them will tell you that the other's story is so inaccurate that either he has a memory like a sieve or is an artist's perverter of the truth. He says that poets, composers of music, and writers, they have good memories, but stockbrokers, they do not have. Moving further, he says that the statesmen, the politicians, they usually have worse memories than other people. When you say or when you ask two statesmen, means two politicians, to respond against the same event, for example, what happened in the last cabinet meeting, both of them tell different stories and keep on accusing one another that they are not accurate. The first politician would accuse the other politician, the next politician, that his memory is like a sieve and he is a perverter of the truth, a fabricator of the truth, and that he is doing willingly. The same thing is done by the other two for the first. This is how, when you ask a question, for example, as he is telling, you would find two different versions of the same thing. That shows that both of them, they have fallible memories. They do not have good memory. Otherwise, the version would have been the same. The frequency with which the facts in the autobiographies and speeches of statesmen are challenged suggests that the world has not yet begun to produce ideal statesmen. Men who, like great poets, have the genius of memory and of intellect combined. Further, he says a very important thing, and that is this, that the autobiographies and speeches of the politicians are frequently challenged of their being fabricated, of their being wrong. And this shows that by now the world has not produced good politicians who could have the combination of wonderful memory with great intellect. Such statesmen are yet to come. The world has not seen such politicians, according to Robert Lind. At the same time, ordinary good memory is so common that we regard a man who does not possesses it as eccentric. Further, he says that normal memory, ordinary good memory is so common that a person who does not have it, people usually call such a person an eccentric man, a madman. We say that this person is mad because he is unable to recall the things, he is unable to kind of recollect the events. And now he gives us a very wonderful example that I am going to tell you how a common man who does not remember the thing is known as eccentric. He says, I have heard of a father who, having offered to take the baby out in a perambulator, was tempted by the sunny morning to pass on his journey and slip into a public house for a glass of beer. Here he tells us a story about a father who, on a very fine sunny morning, goes out with his baby in a perambulator, and when he is moving by a public house that means by a wine shop, he stops for a minute and parks the perambulator at one side of this wine shop and slips into it to have just a glass of beer. Leaving the perambulator outside, he disappeared through the door of the saloon bar that I told you, that big saloon bar, that means a big room where people usually they drink. He goes inside it. He takes wine and he starts sipping the wine there inside it. And what happens at that time, his wife, a little later, his wife had to do some shopping, which took her past the public house, where to her horror she discovered her sleeping baby. What happens at that time? Her wife has to go out a little shopping, and when she also is passing by the same way, she finds the baby there outside of the wine shop. She becomes very angry. She is horrified because the baby is all alone, and there exactly is no trace of the father. She is angry at the behavior of her husband, and she decides to teach him a lesson. She wheeled away the perambulator, picturing to herself his terror when he would come out and find the baby gone. She arrived home anticipating with angry relish the white face and quivering lips that would soon appear with the news that the baby had been stolen. On finding the baby all alone in the perambulator, beside the wine shop. She gets angry. She comes back with the baby and the perambulator to her home, imagining that very soon her husband would turn up with a quivering lips and white face and would inform that the baby has been stolen. This is what the wife has been thinking or imagining while coming back to her home with the baby. But what was her vexation, however, when just before lunch her husband came in smiling cheerfully and asking, "Well, my dear, what's for lunch today?" Having forgotten all about the baby and the fact that he had taken it out with him. But what happens? What she was imagining and what exactly happened was quite contrasting. When the husband comes just before the lunch, the husband at that time was smiling and he very cheerfully asks, "Well, my dear, what's for lunch today?" And he has by that time forgotten all about the baby, the perambulator, and this thing that he has gone in the morning with the baby to have a walk. How many men below the rank of a philosopher would be capable of such absent mindedness as this? Most of us, I fear, are born with prozoically efficient memories. If it were not so, the institution of the family could not survive in any great modern city. In the last of this essay, he says, how many men below the rank of a philosopher, that means very few people below the rank of a philosopher, could have this kind of absent mindedness, this kind of forgetfulness, that the person can forget about his own baby. Most of us, I fear, he says, most of us usually are born with efficient memories, whether we like it or not like it. But have we have to have good memories. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for us to survive as a family inside a great modern city. And here ends the second part of the essay Forgetting. Thank you everyone. I hope that you will enjoy the essay.